Women 50 Plus Talk. This was a series that I designed because I was really acutely aware in my work that there are not enough stories of women's life after 50 that gives us a picture of all the pathways and possibilities available to us that help us reflect on our own lives and help us make decisions for going forward. So I managed to draw in some people that I know to interview and tell their stories. And I also put a promotion on LinkedIn inviting women to connect with me to tell me their story, to share their stories. And Sandy, who I'll introduce you to shortly, is one of the women who came forward. So I'm very grateful to be able to introduce you to her today. So how this will run is I will shortly introduce Sandy, and she and I'll interview her for about half an hour, and then there'll be 10 minutes where we'll open it up to questions. And during question time, it's just using the function of raising your hand so I can see who's got questions, and Sandy and I can answer those then, and then we'll close up. As you know, this is being recorded, and these recordings are available to women who weren't able to make it today and to others who might be interested in viewing in the future. But to begin with, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting. And for me, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And in this year of the referendum, I'm voting yes, and I'm encouraging others to do the same and to support the Uluru Statement of the Heart. And that's kind of my mission. And you might have seen a post of mine on LinkedIn this week to say that 59% of people over the age of 55 in Australia intend to vote no. So anything that any of us can do to be bringing other people along to the yes vote is worth our efforts. So I'm going to introduce you now to Sandy. So Sandy Chakravarti has spent more than 25 years in executive roles in blue chip organisations, including pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, professional services, with oversight of corporate and commercial functions and driving strategic and transformational initiatives. Around 2010, she made a deliberate decision to move from working in the for-profit sector to the for-purpose or the for-impact sectors, where she was able to bring her expertise and long-held skills to some new organisations. This decision took her into the world of not-for-profits, and as well as into non-executive director roles on boards. And we're going to hear about this period of time in her life in terms of the transition that she made and what was informing her decision and what's happened since then. So Sandy is currently the Chief Financial Officer and Company Secretary with Global CCS Institute, which is an international climate change organisation with a mission to accelerate the deployment of CSS as an imperative technology in tackling climate change and providing energy security. So you can hear the for impact, for purpose right there. But she's also currently serving as chair of the Finance, Audit, Investment and Risk Committee at the Southern Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust and the Queen Victoria Market, and holds positions on other boards and committees. So what struck me about Sandy when I met her for the first time was this portfolio of work that she holds, bringing this kind of core skill and expertise into a range of different environments. So Sandy, thank you for joining me today and all of us to tell us your story. Can you take us back to, I think it was around 2010 when you started to think about or made the decision actually to change directions, or not change directions, but step in a different direction. Yeah, in your career.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sue, and welcome to all of you. I think it's sometimes I guess when people read out your resume, I sort of think, is this really me? You tend to have a little bit of the imposter syndrome. So yeah, you sort of, when somebody, neutral reads out your resume, you think, oh, that's really me. But and I'm by no means an exception, I guess. So I want to add, there are a lot of wonderful women around, and as you can see from the virtual table here, and doing a lot of wonderful things. And I think the aim of these sessions, which I liked about Sue, was that we're trying to encourage women to do more of that. Yeah. Um, because there's no dearth of opportunities. So let's go and, explore more. Life doesn't finish after 50. It's starting in a new different direction. So coming back to your point, Sue, in terms of what happened in 2010 was, I guess, um, I'd been working for more than 20 years, or maybe not, probably 15 years in the for-profit industries and sectors, multiple of sectors, and largely Fortune 500 companies, which obviously, as you know, the almighty dollar and the shareholder rule supreme. And I think at that point in time, I think was a bit of a turning point for me when my mom was quite sick, and I began to, wonder what life is all about. And I've, you know, in my younger days, I've always had an yearning for doing more um, for purpose things rather than being in the commercial sector. But, I guess in the you get caught up in a little bit of the rat race, right? You want to get up the corporate ladder, you want to be termed as a success, and all the women as around our age group, especially about 15, 20 years ago, the not-for-profit sector was not more or less seen more as a secondary and or not as a viable alternative to the corporate sector. So you get drawn in and sucked in into the corporate sector. So I guess that's where I got sucked in, and you go on the treadmill and you keep advancing in your career. And then I came to a pause and I thought to myself, look, what matters, you get back to your authentic self and you start questioning what exactly is important to you in your life, right? And that's the moment I had when my mom was sick and, we almost lost her. So I thought, what should I do? And I saw the wonderful activity, wonderful, people who rallied around her, including my family and all the people in the hospital sector, in the aged care sector, who rallied around her to help out. And I thought, gosh, there's an alternative world out there, which I want to be part of again. Yeah. And so that's when I thought I should start taking interest, and giving back to the community became, of paramount importance to me. And I then embarked on my non-executive director career through becoming and director at a couple of not-for-profits like Eating Disorders Victoria and Link Community Transport. So those were the two ones I embarked on in my NED career in the not-for-profit sector. Now, having embarked into the not-for-profit sector, I then got sucked into, becoming more executive roles in the not-for-profit sector, and was tapped on the shoulder to get a role in Red Cross. So that's how my journey started, Sue, is, going back to my authentic self, if I can, summarize that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love hearing that. Going back to my authentic self, it's happens for so many women after 50, and is often preceded by some kind of life quake, an event, some change in life, something that is kind of jolting and makes you think about, what am I doing here? But not an easy transition to make, I wouldn't have thought. How did you go about making that change to this sort of work?
Look, I think it's very interesting. I had this very soul searching conversation with the recruiting agent who helped me make that transition. And one of the things I queried was, having, I guess, grown up in the corporate sector and had the infrastructure and the support systems of a corporate structure, I just wondered whether that would be available in the not-for-profit sector, and how would I make that transition? So one of the things I recall him saying it to me is that perhaps the one way to do it is to join a large not-for-profit like the Australian Red Cross. Now, Australian Red Cross, as you're probably all aware of, is a worldwide global organization, humanitarian organization, and which is, has got its central headquarters in Geneva. And so, therefore, the similarities between large multinationals that I'd worked for and a large global organizations was one way that I helped me to make that transition. So I went from working with large multinationals in a for-profit to a large, so to speak, multinational for a for-purpose. So therefore, it had its global reach, its global feel, global infrastructure, global supporting systems, and also, I guess, was quite a well-established organization in Australia. So therefore, the transition was a bit easier. Or so I thought. But nevertheless, it still is a not-for-profit organization, and therefore there was still a lot of work to be done. The cultures are totally different, yeah, in terms of the way you look at things and how things are done. Now, in a for-profit organization, what happens is we are driven towards outcomes, deliverables, and that becomes your center in what you're going to do and in your career. Whereas, money, people, behaviors, all of that become, I guess, tools you use to drive outcomes. Yeah. Now, in a for-purpose organization, it's not the task or the outcome which is in the center; it's the people, right? Because that's what you're there for. It's for driving your purpose. Yes, so your purpose or your passion becomes, and people obviously become the center, and everything else then falls around it. So even if there are certain outcomes that need to be delivered, and if it's detrimental to the cause that you're doing, you don't go for that outcome. Whereas that's not necessarily the case. So that's a mind switch that definitely had to be made. It was an aha moment for me that, this is how the model works. And once that aha moment, and I was clear that this is the model that I need to work for, things fell into place, and automatically you're able to achieve and to the outcomes that you desire, because you put the community, the vulnerability of the community, the people all in the center to the outcomes that you need to deliver. Yeah. As opposed to just the outcome that needs to be delivered to drive the dollar further. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that and acknowledging the different cultures and drivers within those different fields, because I think certainly I've seen in my time people who think they'll transfer into the for-purpose not-for-profit field and not understand there are different dynamics at play. So for calling that out, it's a really good one. So in at that time when you were making that change and discovering these learnings for yourself about the different drivers of these different sectors, and I'm sure they came with a different pay package and all sorts of things. What was that like for you personally? What was going on for you personally as you were making that orientation in your work?
Look, I think I would be lying if I said, there were a lot of moments where I questioned my decision to move into the not-for-profit arena or for-purpose arena, as I like to call it. And it can be, it's quite difficult, because one of the reasons why the for-purpose sector is seeking a lot of people from the for-profit sector is for the commercial acumen, the disciplines, the behaviors that are actually quite necessary for the for-purpose sector. Contrary to what people think, passion alone cannot drive organizations. Yeah, you need to have, money plays a key primary role in driving for-purpose organizations too. So as a result of that, more than in a for-profit organizations, for-purpose organizations require diligence, capabilities, competencies around managing money, more so in a for-purpose organization, because you do need to drive the dollar further. You need to squeeze every inch around, because at the end of every cent that you're spending is a vulnerable person out there, or a vulnerable outcome that you need to achieve. Yeah.
Mm.
So as a result of that, there's a lot of commercial acumen, disciplines that need to be actually adopted by the for-purpose sector. Now, I found that at Red Cross, there was not a lot of that. And in other organizations that I've been working in, it doesn't exist, or it exists in a very minimal basis. So to get people to think about, it's both passion and money. And I've said this several times before in a lot of, forums, is that it's two flip side of the coin, right? It's passion and money. It's both. You've got to combine both, and it's possible to combine both. And I've proven that in the organizations that I've been, is that you can have your passion and your purpose, but you need to do it in a commercially astute way to drive the outcomes. And I can assure you that having that consciousness around, the purpose, as well as driving it effectively, gets you to the outcome much quicker and takes you further. Yeah. So there has been a lot of frustrating moments where to get people to understand. For example, I remember at Red Cross that there was one program manager I was working with, and she wanted to go above the budget by about $100,000, or to what was allocated to the budget. And she said, "Oh my God, Sandy, I've got to do all of this stuff, and how can I do it? I need all of this money." Then it's teaching them to understand that you first need to work within the envelope you've got. And then if you've got to do more, you've got to seek further funding sources, because, money just doesn't happen. It just doesn't come up. So you've got to work within your budgets. And then if you've got further purpose that you need to drive or extend, you need to seek for more funding. Yeah. So that's how I train them to understand that, you can do good, but you've got to do it within the envelope you've got. Yeah.
Mm.
So that can be frustrating. So there were some moments where I was thinking, "Oh my God, am I doing the right thing?"
Yeah, sure. And so you mentioned the recruiter was someone who provided you with some initial career advice about how to match like for like in changing sectors. Where else did you draw support from when you were going through this big change?
Look, I think the family plays a key role. A lot of advice from, my close family members. My husband, was very supportive. You need family support. Then there's support from, a lot of my mentors. I think mentors play a key role. Family mentors. I've had, mentors going throughout my life that, I guess the way I've structured my mentorship, I guess support, if I can call it that, or model, like if you can call it that, is I have a couple of mentors that I use foundationally, because they know me right from my young days. So they know my career trajectory. So they know what my, I guess, aspirations are, what my desires are, what my dreams are, if I can say that. And so they help me generally from a life career coaches, if you can, I suppose that's what they call themselves. And then at each point in time, at different areas that I would like to have some advice on, I've picked and chosen people from my friendship circle, network circle, from where I've worked as executives or non-executives, who I touch on and get specific advice on specific things. So it's actually not just one particular thing. It's the family, it's the mentorship circle, which comes from your entire network. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sensing this scaffolding around you as you're talking.
Absolutely, yes.
People that you can call upon for different.
Absolutely. And nothing can be, and it's like, even in any organization, it's teamwork, right? You don't get to anywhere you get all on your own. You do need the bootstraps, and the bootstraps come from all the people around you and support around you, right?
Yeah, I love that imagery. So I'm sure one of the things that women who have joined us today are interested to hear about is your work in the on boards, and how you became successful in that, because you've obviously had a number of roles now over the last 10 years as a non-executive director, are on two significant boards here in Melbourne, and have been on others in the past. So when did that come into this story for you, and how did you get started as a non-executive director?
Yeah, so I think if you recall, I mentioned that my foray into the for-purpose sector was through non-executive directorship, right? Started with because I wanted to, give back to the community, and I started working with Eating Disorders Victoria and with Link Community to Transport. I guess that was purely because ignited by my passion to give back to the community. Yeah. And both those organizations, I guess, it was just opportunistic. They happened to advertise for non-executive directors. I had the right skill sets, from the finance and audit perspective. So I was the chair of finance and audit committees in both. So it was opportunistic. But what I think is that from that sort of opened a world for me of strategy, governance, risk, compliance, and organizational, I guess, growth and trajectories, which, from a for-profit experience, I've had, huge experience with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not what I call myself as the cut and dried CFO. Yeah. I very much like to absorb myself into the operations of an organization, get involved with. I'm quite strategic in my nature, in my outlook. So therefore, I try to use my financial skills and financial acumen to drive and help the organization drive its strategy forward. And that naturally encompasses things like risk. And risk is a huge component of any director's, I guess, duty. Yeah. Because it's all about risk management. When you're on a board, it's all about risk management. Anything you touch, it's legal risk, it's reputational risk, it's cyber risk, it's strategic risk. It's all about risk. It's all managing all about risk, financial risk, most importantly, right? So I got very much interested in risk, and obviously having a natural, disposition to all of these areas, like all of that risk. I think coming from a financial background, I was very keen on it, and I've been involved with operations throughout my life. I've ventured into, setting up operations in India, and I've worked in China setting up their operations. So, being a COO comes naturally to me, and that was a natural transition to the board. But I guess I must say that I developed a passion for governance. Yeah. And I felt that governance is so key to any organization's path to success. Yeah. Management of the organization, which sits with the board level, driving the strategic direction of an organization. It was just, it just resonated with me completely. Yeah. So, and a lot of people, a lot of my friends call me, I'm a bit nerdy for having a passion as governance, but that's why I love governance. So that's how I ended up in being, went down the path of non-executive directorship. Yeah.
And Sandy, I'm the chair of a not-for-profit board, and it struck me when you were talking about how valuable someone with your skill set and knowledge base is to a board. It's really hard to attract that kind of skill. So, but the key message I'm also hearing from you is it's about playing to your strengths. So you
Absolutely.
are really clear about your work experience, your professional experience, and then the value that brings to.
Absolutely. It's what you bring to the table. Yeah.
So I'm interested, you and I caught up the other day and we touched on the experience that you have in terms of being a woman of colour and what that's been like for you in being on boards. And I'm also interested in, so when you look around the room in these environments, looking for other people of colour and also women over 50, what's your sense of what's happening there?
Yeah, I think it's, I wouldn't say that it's going at a pace that I would like to see, both from from a gender perspective and a woman of color perspective. Both of them, I think it's going at I don't even know what pace it is. It's probably not even glacial. It's less than glacial, I think. Like to see a lot more advancement in that, from a more presence of women and women of color in the boards of Australia. Yeah. Um, if you had asked me this question about maybe 20 years ago, I would have probably said, oh, I don't see any issues with women of color because, as you call climbing up the corporate ladder, you don't see as much of it. It's more I guess, the skill sets that are at play. But as you climb up the corporate ladder and you get into C-suite and at the board levels, it's not as much just because people are more or less, skilled at that level. So it's more the networks you've got, the connections you've got, I think the politics of it all tends to also come to play. And the difference then comes in terms of how well positioned you are in playing that, I guess, I don't like to use the word game, but it is that in the end, that how well you are placed in playing the network game, playing the political game, becomes quite important. And I guess women of color, especially, people who've just migrated to the country in a couple of decades ago, like myself, I haven't been born here and educated here. So for me, the networks are more what I've developed through my corporate career rather than, a lot of the times you find that the boys club is your school network, is your university network. And I don't have a lot of that. So I find that people tend to affiliate and go back to those networks more in terms of how they fill board positions and, and the like. So I guess that tends to be a little bit of a barrier. But look, nevertheless, I don't think I've let that, take too much of I've not let it become important in my career. And so try to push my way through. And in the end, I've found that my perseverance, my resilience, and the ability to demonstrate my skills has played a huge role in helping me and assisted me to get into board roles. Yeah. So once I got into the board arena, I must say I've not had it very challenging. It's not been challenging to actually get more additional board roles. Yeah. I've actually had to, choose which areas and what areas are passionate for me. But what is difficult is having entered into the for-purpose sector, breaking into the for-profit sector, because my experience has been considerably in both sectors, right? For-profit as well as not-for-profit. And I know that coming from a finance background and having both sectors experience and able to connect the dots between that and experiences that you've got across both sectors, multiple sectors and multiple industries would be valuable to any organization that, I am in. But breaking into the private sector has been quite challenging because you tend to get, whether if you're in the private sector, you get typecast as a private sector executive director. And then you're in the not-for-profit, you get typecast as a for-purpose executive director. So again, it's come down to that, whole classic conundrum of, sectoral, I guess, leanings and thinking of people who are risk averse to say, okay, I've got a person here who's worked in a particular sector, so I'll use that person. Yeah. And it's that same risk awareness, aversion towards risk and using people who are familiar with the experiences they have, instead of thinking, oh my God, they bring so much of diversity to the table. So that switch from thinking of going from being safe and secure in your thinking in what you're bringing to the board table to thinking diversity. Diversity needs to become a mainstream language of boards in Australia because diversity brings so much to the table. And I'm not talking just diversity in terms of gender or color or whatever. I'm talking about thinking too, right? It's not only diversity in terms of women and men and color. It's also diversity in the sectoral experiences you've got. Yeah. So it's diversity in all its aspects. Yeah. So diversity needs to become a mainstream language, in the mainstream vocabulary when hiring people into boards in Australia.
I love that. We need to sort of open this up for questions, but I've got one last one for you, Sandy, and I have to say, you know, the future looks bright having women like you active in the sort of work that you're doing, and being able to be a role model for other women of colour, other people of colour, to have you doing the work that you're doing and speaking publicly about it is excellent. So my last question is for women who are thinking about a portfolio career, so having a paid job for an organisation, or perhaps running their own small business, and then non-executive director roles, and perhaps other work as well. What would be your most important piece of advice you could offer for women who are thinking about creating that life for themselves?
Look, I think the first thing I would say is that have confidence. Yeah. And that's one thing I learned across my career, is that women typically tend to question themselves. Oh, can I do this? Or can I do that? And we all know that. We do that ourselves, right? Oh, you know, am I capable of having a portfolio career? Or can I go into an area which is not familiar to me? You know, we women can do a lot more than, you know, anybody else can. And I think have confidence in yourself. Yeah. Build up that confidence and learn to portray that confidence, because if you feel confident in yourself, you can portray it, right? And learn to build that confidence by, you know, I guess systematically going through the skills you've got. And that's one thing I didn't do earlier on in my life, is, you know, systematically look at all the skill sets I have and what value I can bring to the table. Yeah. So whatever area or whatever line of career you're looking at, it's nothing is impossible. Have the confidence to go for it. That's one thing. Once you've got the confidence, then I guess and I think people say this all the time, it's age-old paradigm of networking. Yep. You know, there is no other way is to network. That's where, I mean, we have to work within the environments we've got. Australian environment is such that it works on the networks. Yeah. So you do need to get your networks up and running. So think about, if you're looking at a career, look at it like a 10-year time span. Yeah. So if you're trying to build a portfolio career into something else, think about it in advance. Think about way ahead and say, this is where I want to be in 10 years time. And that's when you have to give it that, you know, length of time to do that, because building networks in the necessary areas that you want to be in takes a bit of time, because networking doesn't happen. Relationship building doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of time. You need to build that. So having confidence, building your networks, and think about what actually ignites your passion. Yeah. Otherwise, it's, you know, not being authentic and not being authentic to what you know, the fire in your belly comes through quite clearly. And so you might wonder, oh, why people don't, you know, reflect on why I'm not being, you know, successful in a particular thing. It's probably that reflection doesn't come through, you know, the passion doesn't come through. So make sure that you're passionate about what you're doing. Yeah? And ask for support. There's a lot of support around. People hesitate about asking support. It's, you know, unbelievable the number of times I've reached out to people and I'm thinking, oh God, should I be saying something? People love helping other people, especially women, love helping other women, you know, so reach out to other women, reach out to other people. You have a lot of I've talked about my mentorship, you have a lot of mentors, so reach out to them. And, you know, yeah, and perseverance is key. Yeah. Don't feel dejected. Keep at it, you know.
That is all very, very good advice. Thanks, Sandy.
Thanks.
Now I'm going to open it to questions, and I can see, Thea, that you've put one in the chat. Would you like to take yourself off mute and ask that question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, because I've got trouble with my computer and its sound system. So my question is about the next stage of your life. You know, you're still on a rollicking career trajectory, whereas for me, I went at the other end of my career. Do you give time to, or ever think about what you might do when you finish this stage of your working life, or are there more steps? Is it just, you know, a natural progression, or are there leaps and bounds?
Look, it's taken me, I guess, about 10 years to get to this point. So I think I have to start thinking about what the next 10 years look like.
Or not?
Maybe I'll probably, sitting on a beach somewhere sipping champagne. Maybe that's my next career goal. But look, I think I've actually probably reaching a point where I'm actually reached a level where I'm balancing my executive and non-executive career quite well. I'm in a very sweet spot at the moment. Touch wood. And I like the executive role I've got now. It's in an area which is passionate, climate action. So it's about carbon capture and reducing carbon emissions in the world and delivering impact in the world. So I like that. And I've got 2 or 3 a few non-executive directorships, which I really, really thoroughly enjoy. But, if you'd asked me this question about 6 months, because I've been in this executive role for about 6 months, I would have, I reached a point where I was quite happy just doing a portfolio of non-executive directorships and combining that with, personal goals like traveling and, spending more time with the family and, those kind of more personal goals. Yeah. But I got tapped on the shoulder for this role. So I just jumped into it, boots and all, and here I am. So in terms of the next step, I was actually quite happy to embark into just a pure non-executive directorship roles. And I've got a lot of friends who are actually doing that at the moment. So for me, the natural progression is to go to a non-executive directorship roles. But my next thing, which I would like to leap into, is the private sector. And that's what I'm trying now very hard to, make a break into the private sector directorships. Yeah. Which is proving quite challenging for me at this point in time. So I have to, I've tried a few strategies. I need to try and look and see what other strategies will work for me to get into and break that barrier for myself. So that's my next step. Yeah.
Well, you're a woman of perseverance, Sandy. So I have no doubt that you.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, I don't give up on this one. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Just use your raised hand. Barbara.
Hi everybody, and hi Sandy. Thank you. I loved your outline of what you've done and why you've done it. I love the description about moving from the for profit to for purpose, and that feeling that was about coming back to your true self, your authentic self. So my question is, you talked about when you made that shift, about times when you questioned whether that was the right thing to do, or was, I don't want to read too much into it, perhaps uncertain about having made that decision. I'm really interested in these kind of transition times, partly because, you learn from other people about these times for yourself. Yeah. But did you have a sort of, in a way, a tipping point between, feeling that uncertainty and questioning, and then deciding that, yeah, this is right for me for now, or, wherever it is that you landed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I think for me, even though I was questioning whether it was the right decision or not, I think fundamentally at the bottom, I was not seriously questioning, whether I'd made the right decision to come into the for-purpose sector. It was more about, the peripherals around how can I make it more effective and successful in the sector that I am. But I never seriously thought about going back to the for-profit sector. I think that chapter was closed for me. I really didn't want to do it again. Yeah. I think I was quite over, chasing, shareholder returns and chasing the dollar and the bottom line. And I think I did want to, my progression in my career in terms of the spectrum of organizations that I work for, I was quite happy to move into the next hybrid, which was, driving commercial thinking in for-purpose organization. Yeah. So I was happy that I was there, but what I was frustrated about was how can I get this message across more effectively in for-purpose organizations, and drive that commercial thinking and commercial mindsets. Yeah, I don't think I was I was questioning about going back, but it's more about frustrations about how to make it more effective and add more value effectively.
Yeah. So it's sort of something like learning to take up a new identity and be effective in that.
Correct. Exactly.
Setting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot
absolutely.
of sense.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
That's a great question, Barbara. A really,
Yeah.
really great question. Now, we've also got one from Joanna who can't join us and ask for herself. And she says, any suggestions for getting into the right networks to move into for-profit boards? So many seem to be dominated by the same people. How do you move into networks with those people who are already well connected?
Yes, I know. It's look, it's a conundrum, I must say. I guess it's a tough one. There are, I guess if you are, it's much easier if you take up like a CEO role. I think it becomes easier because for some reason, I think there seems to be, again, a mindset among, in the governance circles in Australia that if you are a CEO already, you've got a better trajectory to being on the board. Yeah. So I guess one of the key things that helps you get onto the board is having managed an operation. Yeah. It may not necessarily be in a CEO capacity, but if you are, for example, a functional head who's managed an operation, then it helps you to get onto a for-profit board. That would be one way. So one way of getting that is, you've got places like, I guess, Chief Executive Women, which is one of the premier, I guess, organizations that helps promote women to get onto corporate boards. And then there's Women on Boards, and Women on Boards has its own ASX, I guess, body which helps promote you to, not promote you exactly, but skills you better to get onto ASX boards. Then I guess it's also good to have some, I guess, governance qualifications, like either with the Governance Institute or Australian Institute of Company Directors. Having those qualifications is an added impetus. So, and once you get onto those groups, I guess, you're there to, you can network with a lot of people there who are already on for-profit boards. So that helps a lot. So that would be some of the various means to, get onto corporate boards. Yeah.
Excellent advice, Sandy. And the other organisation I would recommend women to is Take On Board, which is a governance support program for new directors. And then there's more of a masterclass for women who have got some experience, and it's kind of a peer support program once you're on a board. So that's
and there are a lot of sorry to jump in there, Sue, but there are a lot of recruiting organizations, recruiting firms who have got their board advisory arms, which I think you can also tap into, and they do have their master databases. You can put your name on those databases and they will tap into you when there are board roles up, and you can also attend. They have a lot of forums and a lot of master classes. They conduct them themselves because it's it's like a double a win-win situation for them to have more people available with capabilities whom they can appoint into boards, because a lot of recruiting firms do get their I guess the jobs to get people on board, so they take on board roles. So therefore that would be one avenue to I guess tap onto.
Okay, we are at time, so I'm going to pause questions there and thank Sandy for her sharing her story with us today. Sandy, I've really enjoyed the clarity and confidence that you've encouraging us to have for ourselves, but I've really enjoyed watching that in you as well, as you've talked about what you're really good at, what you're passionate about, what's driven you through this period of change, and all of the endeavours that you're engaged with and bringing your skill and knowledge to lots of different places. And thank you again for sharing your story. I can see lots of thanks in the comments as well, so I know that's been appreciated. And thank all of you for joining us here today. And that's the fourth of these lunchtime seminars in May, and I'm definitely going to be doing some more of these in the future, so watch this space. And in the meantime, if you'd like to work with me, you can find me at flourishafter50.com.au, where I do coaching and small group programs for women over 50 going through transitions or getting ready for retirement. So look me up and see if there's something there that would be of value to you as you face your own life and career transitions. Thank you, all of you, very much for joining in today.
And I must say thank you to you, Sue, and thanks for the opportunity. And it's lovely to meet all of you ladies, and all the best to all of you. And if you do want to reach out for a chat or, anything, feel free to reach out to me through Sue, and happy to have any type of conversations. And I think that's where talk about networking. Let's leverage this kind of networks and so to help us in our careers and progression.
Thanks, Sandy. That's very generous of her. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.